Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, taking my stab at what this Oklahoma Sooner depth chart is going to look like heading into 2025. And I think this is an exciting conversation for a couple of different reasons. One, I get to hear from you guys in the comment section. I know that I have some hot takes incorporated in my depth chart prediction, but I think you also have this conversation to kind of shed some light on how this roster looks as we sit right now. And hey, what are some of the finishing touches, if you will, that we need to go out and do in the transfer portal to make sure all the cracks on our roster are filled heading into 2025? Fired up to get into it. To the Oklahoma fans, please let it fly in the comment section. Y'all know when I bust out the Excel sheet, we mean business. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I think there's this weird narrative around this Oklahoma team that, yes, they lost some good players to the NFL draft. They lost some good players to the transfer portal. There's this narrative that Oklahoma is going to take a step back from where they were in 2024. It's really hard to make that argument when you have a difference maker like John Mateer coming into this offense. Not only John Mateer, but Ben Arbuckle. It's hard to see an offense that does not take massive strides in the 2025 season. It kind of reminds me of what we saw from Miami with Cam Ward. Where the Miami fans will be the first to admit there were some serious problems with this Miami Hurricanes team in 2024. But when you have a difference maker at the quarterback position, like a Cam Ward, like a John Mateer, you can kind of overcome some of those question marks. And I think John Mateer, to me, is that kind of quarterback. Personally, I looked at the transfer portal market at the quarterback position. I didn't think there were a lot of game changers. When John Mateer hit, that was the one guy where it's like, if you're pushing your chips in to get a quarterback, John Mateer would be my guy because I think he fundamentally changes this Oklahoma offense. And obviously bringing Ben Arbuckle, who I think is one of the best offensive coordinators into Norman as well, just from the quarterback offensive coordinator dynamic, it's hard to see this Oklahoma offense not taking a step in the right direction. Now, the running back spot, I went with the young guns. What I think is going to happen with Oklahoma is you got Xavier Robinson, who I thought was very impressive as a true freshman. You have Taylor Tatum, who was not as impressive, but we all know this kid can play. Javante Barnes, Gavin Sawchuk. It's a deep running back room. The goal for Ben Arbuckle, Brent Venables, this Oklahoma offensive coaching staff is, hey, what running back over the next 8 months separates? Who you want to be deep at the running back spot because you want to keep these running backs fresh, but you also probably want a guy to emerge as that difference maker at the running back position. That's my question for this Oklahoma running back. I think there's a bunch of guys that certainly can do it. And hey, Javante Barnes, Gavin Sawchuk, they're certainly capable of doing it as well. Which one emerges is probably my question. I felt like at times Oklahoma was kind of just playing running back roulette and just kind of throwing a running back out there and hoping they get hot. And I know a lot of Oklahoma fans were frustrated with the running back rotations that we saw from DeMarco Murray. And I don't think Oklahoma fans are totally wrong from that as well. Can a running back emerge to make DeMarco Murray's life a little bit easier and say, hey, maybe we don't need to rotate as much because we got our guy that we want to give 20-plus touches a game? That's kind of the question I have at the running back spot. Going to the wide receiver position, look, Deion Burks coming back is massive. A healthy Deion Burks with John Mateer at quarterback, that to me represents one of the more dangerous wide receiver quarterback connections that we're going to see in college football. Now, who are the other pieces that step up? You bring some intriguing names into the transfer portal. Guys like Giovanni Gibson, Keontae Lewis. I also think there are some intriguing names on this roster. Ivan Carrion, to me, is the guy I'm most excited for. I mean, he's for one, the size that he has, I'll just be quite frank, he kind of reminds me of Mike Evans because he's a really big wide receiver that knows how to use his physicality, but he's also a guy that's pretty damn smooth mover that can create some separation. This is somebody that I think might really come on for Oklahoma in 2025. And if you get that, not only are you getting a really imposing blocker on the perimeter with Ivan Carrion, I think you're getting kind of a matchup nightmare that can work vertically down the field, that can command the middle of the field. He's probably the guy outside of Deion Burks that I would project as really emerging. And Zion Reagan's, I'll say, as a true freshman, it was clear that he wasn't quite physically ready to play as a true freshman. Oklahoma had to kind of force him on the football field because of all the injuries. That's a guy that if he can clean up some of the physicality, I feel like he just gets, when he's running his routes, I mean, he just gets disrupted so much. He's got to put on some weight, got to gain a little physicality, got to be better with the hands, but he's a special mover. I don't think you can argue that. So I'm kind of intrigued to see what the year two jump looks like for Zion Reagan's as well. Tight end position, this is a question mark, I would say, for Oklahoma. You brought in a bunch of tight ends. I think Will Huggins from Pittsburgh State being the most intriguing. I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're probably hoping Devon Mitchell going into year two is a guy that Oklahoma can lean on. Devon Mitchell's interesting because he was a reclass guy. He was supposed to be a 2025 or reclass to 2024. And it's hard just generally to get on the football field as a freshman at the tight end position because there's so many aspects about that position you have to master. I think year two Devon Mitchell has a chance to be one of those guys that we didn't really hear about in year one. And then it's like, all right, he might be a centerpiece in this offense in the 2025 season. The big storyline, at least in my opinion. If this offensive line comes together with John Mateer at quarterback, with Ben Arbuckle running the offense, this can be a very good offense. It hinges on what this offensive line is going to be. We all know it was a disaster in the 2024 season. The question mark here is you make some transfer portal additions, just like Oklahoma did last year, and last year just felt like they settled. They settled for a guy like Spencer Brown. Luke Blanco is a guy that I'm really excited about. Started some early games as a true freshman at left tackle, played right tackle at Stanford. I don't think he's a guy that I think's getting better. The difference between Luke Blanco and Spencer Brown is, look, Spencer Brown was going into his fifth year. So we kind of knew what he was coming from Michigan State. That was a question mark starting at tackle in the SEC. Luke Blanco, yes, he's a question mark, but he's only going into year three with a lot of experience under his belt. There's a real reality where Luke Blanco gets better from where he was in the 2024 year and can be a really quality and I think he can play tackle. I know there's a lot of people that think he plays on the inside. I think he's athletic enough to play tackle. I think Oklahoma might have had big with him. Now, Derek Simmons, I have my question marks about. Just when you watch him play the power four level, we turn on the film from NC State last year, there's probably some question marks, but I'm not saying I don't like the addition. A guy that's played a lot of football that can kind of raise the floor of the room. I think the big question marks are, you look at Jake Taylor, Jacob Sexton, can they stay healthy? And then the freshmen, Michael Fasusi, Ryan Foji, can they push to get on the football field? I look at the inside of the offensive line. I feel pretty dang good about it. Fabici was probably the most consistent offensive lineman. I think Troy Everett's solid. I think Eddie Pierre-Louis has a very bright future. My question marks at the tackles. If this tackle position comes together, you better watch out because I think this Oklahoma offense can be night and day from what it was in 2024. But as all Oklahoma fans know, you got to have quality offensive line play if you want to be successful in the SEC. And we kind of learned that the hard way in 2024. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the football, which certainly was not the problem last year. This defense was good. I think it's going to continue to be good. I think what excites me most when I look at, my early depth chart prediction here, Marvin Jones Jr., what does he look like going into his last year of college football? And our Mason Thomas coming back with PJ Adebawore. Those are three names that have ultra high upside. And we saw it from our Mason Thomas. He's quite frankly a guy that could have gone to the NFL. I think that he put out NFL film in 2024. Marvin Jones Jr., we all know how talented this kid is. He was a five-star prospect coming out of high school, and you've seen the flashes during his time at Georgia and Florida State. Can he find that fully, consistently dominant edge rusher in 2025? And then I think we're looking at PJ Adebawore. Look, we knew PJ wasn't going to be a massive factor early in his career. He needed some development. He needed some seasoning. This would be the year that we expect him to not as a Michigan fan, and I'm not sure how many Oklahoma fans know of this name. His name was David Ojabo. He was a guy that very similar kind of prospect that PJ was, not as highly rated, but very similar in terms of freaky traits. Maybe not the best football player yet. You didn't hear from David Ojabo for the first 24 months that he was within this Michigan program. And then all of a sudden it wasn't like the light bulb flickered. The light bulb popped open. And all of a sudden David Ajabo came out, I believe it was his junior year, and was dominant. I think there's a chance that that can be PJ. We knew he wasn't going to be an early guy. There's the 5 stars come in different forms, right? There's some guys that are ready to play early. There's some guys that have all the traits but need some development. PJ was that kind of prospect. Is year 3 is year 3 the year of PJ? Is the question that I have, because if it is, R. Mason Thomas, Marvin Jones Jr., PJ coming off the edge, I'd throw in a guy like Daniel Okoye as well as like a really traitsy guy. I think he might need another year, but he's another guy that could come on. There's a lot of excitement for me in terms of what the edge rusher room looks like. Then you look at the inside. Jaden Jackson is just straight up one of the best interior defensive linemen we see in college football. He's not gonna light up the stat sheet, but golly, is he solid, especially as a freshman on the inside. He looked more physical than most offensive linemen who were 20, 22 years old guys trying to block him. David Stone getting another year, Grayson Hall and Dominic Williams. Those are 4 guys we got a lot of confidence in. Linebacker room. Obviously, you replaced Danny Stutzman. I think you have the guys. Now, Lewis Carter was a tough one because I thought Lewis Carter was a really good football player, decided to hit the transfer portal. Look, why did Lewis Carter hit the portal? Because, Oklahoma's good there. Kip Lewis, I think is going to be a stud. Kobe McKenzie, very solid. Kendall Daniels, I think, a very good get. I'm interested to see if he plays a little cheetah too, because he has some experience in the back end. Look, there's no Danny Stutzman, and you can't really replace a guy like him and what he meant to Oklahoma's defense. You got a lot of names that can be really good. And then the back end, I'm leaning into the youth. I mean, talk about Eli Bowen as a true freshman, looked awesome. Jacoby Johnson, some growing pains, but I think he can be good, especially with the injuries that Gentry Williams deals with. Back end, Peyton Bowen, Robert Spears Jennings, Boganowski, I think is going to be a good football player. Reggie Powers. To me, maybe on paper, you would have liked to seen Oklahoma add another defensive back. Oklahoma could have if they wanted to. I think what we were just told by Brent Venables, we got a lot of confidence in some of the young cats that we have in the back, and I think that's why Oklahoma didn't get all that aggressive. If this offensive line comes together, which is an if, I think all Oklahoma fans know that, this can be a really good football team. So I look at the defense, say this defense, especially in the front seven, is going to be really good. I kind of have confidence that it's going to be good in 2025. John Mateer's a dude. Ben Arbuckle was a great hire. You got some weapons around John Mateer. If this offensive line comes together, that's the key to this season. This team is going to be dangerous in 2025. We'll see how it plays out. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. The way I look at it, and I would love to hear from y'all, transfer portal additions, I'm never going to say no to quality offensive linemen. I'm never going to say no to another difference maker at wide receiver. Outside of that, I look at it and I like it. Love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.